Hi, my name is Carrie Gast. I'm head of children's curriculum and On the Road to Kindergarten pop-up library. I'm here to welcome all of you. Thank you for joining us tonight for a Battle of the Books author presentation by Christine Day, who wrote I Can Make This Promise, and she's here to join us today. Some housekeeping notes. You won't be able to talk, but you can put questions in chat. If you have additional questions about Battle of the Books, our help person, Addison Landers, will answer those for you. If you have additional questions, if we have time, we'll take additional questions for Christine Day at the end after the questions we asked that were submitted when you registered for this event this evening. And Simone Kolnick is also one of our hosts. And Simone, do you want to go ahead and switch to our next slide? Before we begin, I want to let everyone know we want to respectfully honor the Susquehannock Confederation who governed, lived, farmed, and hunted on the land we now call Howard County. Their nations conceded into land treaties in 1652 and 1661 after English colonizers ended their generational governance and stewardship of the land Howard County is built upon. This practice of land acknowledgement is to honor and respect the indigenous inhabitants, both from the past and the present. And I'm going to turn it over to Simone, our event producer.
All right, thank you so much, Carrie. Thank you for that. I had to switch gears here for a moment. So I am, again, Simone Kolnick. I'm the event producer for Howard County Library System, and I'm excited that you guys are here tonight. And shout out to all of our BOB participants and all the student readers who are on this call today. Before I get into introducing our special guest, Christine Day, who is the author of I Can Make This Promise, which is a book on our 2023 BOB book list this year, I'd like to share a little bit about her background. So Christine Day's first two novels, I Can Make This Promise, which you all are reading, and The Sea in Winter were American Indian Youth Literature Award honor titles. She also wrote She Persisted, Maria Tallchief, a chapter book biography in Chelsea Clinton's series about inspirational women. Her next book, We Still Belong, is coming to shelves on August 1st, 2023. So you can check it out right here, Howard County Library System. Christine lives in the Pacific Northwest with her family. And just for fun, I'm sure she'll be happy to share with you guys too what time it is right now. As we were chatting, Christine will be in conversation with Carrie and myself. And Christine, we just want to thank you so much for being here. We are very excited to have you with us today.
Hey, thank you so much for that really lovely introduction, Simone. And hello, everyone who is able to attend tonight. I am so looking forward to your questions. I'm so grateful to you all for spending your Monday evenings with me. And for me, it is still Monday afternoon. It is 4:07 p.m. here in Washington State. But and it's like nice and sunny outside too, but really feeling like spring. And I hope the same is true for you guys. I know that weather all across the country has been going a little wild the past few days. But anyway, so yeah, I'm just really so honored to be a part of the Battle of the Books program, to have my work recognized, and to just be sharing this space with you all tonight and to spend time with your questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Christine. So I will start with the first question, and Simone and I will take turns. So these questions were all submitted by students or youth who registered to attend your event this evening. First question, how long did it take you to write this book, I Can Make This Promise, and where did you get the idea to write it this way?
Great question to start us off. Thank you so much. Well, I worked on Edie's story for a little over 2 years. I actually know exactly when I started was in May of 2016. And I continued to work on it up until about January of 2019 was when I turned in the final official draft to my editor, and it came out on shelves later that year in October. So, how I originally kind of came up with this idea, I had been writing and trying to get published for a little while at the time that I came up with Ease, the concept of the story. It was the fourth book that I actually wrote, but the first one to make it all the way to shelves. And I came up with the idea after I came across this flyer for a publishing contest, actually. And it was this publishing contest that was being hosted by Penguin Random House, which is one of the big publishing houses in New York City. And they were looking for unpublished writers of diverse or marginalized backgrounds. And um, they wanted someone to write a story that in some way honored Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry by Mildred D. Taylor. And something about this very open-ended yet heartfelt prompt really made me think about a lot of the middle grade books that I had loved and connected with so deeply when I was a kid. And I basically just from there, Edie's voice kind of popped into my head and she never went away. And that was kind of how I started writing it was in response to this publishing contest, which I did enter, did not win, but that's okay because it all turned out all right in the end. And yeah, it just really felt so serendipitous and like all the writing practice, all the years I had been spending focusing on my craft and trying to figure out what kind of writer I wanted to be and what kinds of stories I had to tell was all leading me up to that moment. So, yeah.
Lovely. Thank you to Maria for that question. And our next question is from Michelle. So Michelle wants to know, what did you do as a fifth grader to help you grow as a writer?
Michelle, that is a wonderful question. That is uh really, really great. I love that so much. And I know immediately my answer has to be when I was in the fifth grade, I was just reading a ton. And I think that that is truly the most important thing that young aspiring writers can do is to just read so very much. You know, you can spend time rereading your favorite books, spend time reading all different kinds of genres, all different authors, whatever it is that your lovely librarians kind of point you towards, or the books that they choose to put on display for whatever reason, you know, just yeah, just read a lot. And that is really the best way to learn about what it is that you love from stories. And also, if you have a hard time getting into certain books, it helps you learn too, like, you know, maybe something about a certain genre just doesn't connect with you as deeply as, you know, maybe you prefer fantasy stories with dragons and fantastical creatures and magic versus real world stories, or the other way around. Maybe you're really drawn to mysteries and you enjoy reading a book that feels like a really nicely put together puzzle. Um, there's just so many things that you will learn about yourself as a reader and writer, which will then help you grow in your writing through just reading.
Thank you. So our next question is from Tina. What was your favorite part of writing your books?
I think that my favorite part of writing my books and becoming a published author has actually been doing events like this and also doing school visits where I go and get to chat with my young readers and hear their thoughts about the stories and what it is that connected deeply with them. And that has certainly been the most rewarding aspect of this whole journey.
Thank you. Our next question is from Angela. She wants to know, what advice would you give young authors writing their first chapter book?
Chapter book specifically. Well, to build off of the advice I already gave, kind of, which is to just read a lot. Um, I guess just practice and persistence are the other two words that kind of pop into my mind because um, with any craft, anything that you're interested in or want to pursue in your life, it won't always be easy, but the more you practice and the more time you really spend trying to figure out what methods work best for you, because all writers work a little bit differently and it's a very individual experience, a very individual journey. And it's the sort of thing that you just learn with time. So be patient with yourself when you're first starting out, practice, persist, and actually, perhaps most importantly, have fun and really just um, write things that you love, write things that inspire your own curiosity and your own kind of will to keep going. And that's how it should be. Writing should ultimately be really fun.
Thank you. This question is from Dee, and it relates to the one you just answered. What tips, insights, or advice can you share about key strategies or tools in the drafting process from discovery stage until final copy?
Ooh, that's a nice one too. Key strategies. I will tell you a couple things that I do that I don't know if these are key strategies. I have to just say that my personal process is kind of ever evolving. And, in a lot of ways, I am still very much learning myself. I think that that's actually one of the best things about writing is it's only something you can ever continue to grow in. It's something you can only ever become better at in a way. Like there's there's no kind of set formula that I follow. There's no exact steps that I repeat necessarily. It is all just, you know, it's a constant learning process. It's a constant evolution. But I will tell you a few strategies that I've kind of picked up over the years, which have really helped me a lot. Um, for one thing, and I guess this also kind of actually relates to our friend who was asking specifically about chapter books, is one thing that I've started to do with more recent books. Actually, I didn't do this with I Can Make This Promise, but I've been doing it kind of since, is I really keep track of the word counts of each chapter in my kind of works in progress. And I try to make sure that the word counts and the length of each chapter is mostly pretty uniform and pretty quick. So I like have a kind of document where I keep track of like the number of words in each chapter. And you can totally see if you flip through this advanced copy of what's going to be my next book, if you kind of like pay attention to how the like chapter headers appear every few pages, it's very like uniform kind of. And in a way that does sound formulaic, but for me, it really helped me with my pacing as an author. And it really helped me make sure that I was kind of getting to the key points in the story in a way that I hope was quick and will be engaging for readers when they read this book that's coming out in August. Um, Other things that I do when I'm revising a book and I receive my kind of big letter from my editor, instead of starting the revision process in the same Microsoft Word document, I open a fresh, brand new one on my screen and I like start rewriting everything from the beginning with her notes in mind. Does that make sense? So I don't like copy and paste and I don't work in the old document. I kind of start anew and revise and have to choose and commit to every single word along the way. And the last key strategy I will share is that before I turn in my books, and again, this is something I almost wish I had done with I Can Make This Promise actually, because it's something I've started to do later in my career, but um, again, just constantly learning and growing, is I make sure that I spend some time to actually sit and reread the entire book out loud to myself from start to finish before I turn it in and consider myself completely done with it. And yeah, so those are a few things. Keep track of your word counts in your chapters so that you're not spending too long in any particular spot in the story. Revising in fresh, brand new Microsoft Word documents, and most importantly, rereading your work to yourself and reading your work out loud to yourself is, I think, pretty helpful and important. Great question. Thank you.
Yeah, a very technical question. This one kind of backs us up a little bit. It's from Kripa, who is another author of Ray of Light. What inspires you to even write books?
Oh, so many things. I mean, I think that I draw inspiration from a lot of different areas of my life. Basically, childhood memories, places I've been, people I've known who have made big impressions on me, questions that I have about humanity and who we are and where we are now and where we're going. Um, Basically, just anything that I find myself thinking about a lot is typically what I end up writing about. And how I came to writing, I I don't even really know how to answer it anymore because it's just something that has been such a big part of my life for so long. I started writing and telling stories when I was very young, when I first learned how to write, really. So it's just always been something that I've loved and that I've done, and I couldn't imagine not writing in my life. So, yeah.
Thank you. This question is from Jennifer. What are some ways you handle writer's block?
I am a big fan of taking breaks when I need to. And I realize that advice is not necessarily the best to give students who maybe have specific deadlines to work around and um, you know, things that are due to your teachers. But when you're working on things that are kind of just for yourself or just for continuing to build your practice as a writer, I find that if you're having a hard time or you're feeling stuck or frustrated or just really creatively blocked, to just take a little break and reconnect with other things in your life that bring you joy and inspiration and come back to the writing when you feel ready to. Because I personally find that when I try to just push through those moments and ignore the fact that I really need a break and that I could actually really benefit from just giving my brain some time to rest, uh, what I come up with usually isn't very good. And so now I just kind of take a break and come back to it when I feel more ready.
That is priceless advice. Very good advice for everyone. This next question is from two people, Gohar and Subata. What is the background of the main character in I Can Make This Promise?
What is her background? Um,
Background.
yeah, so she is, well, she is the daughter of a pre-Indian Child Welfare Act adoptee, and on her mother's side, she is Suquamish and Duwamish. And I specifically chose those two tribes to kind of name in her background because those are the two tribes that Chief Seattle, who the city of Seattle is named after, those are the two tribes that he represented as uh, as chief, sort of like their governor, their leader, when he signed on their behalf in the Treaty of Point Elliott, which is a really significant treaty here in the Pacific Northwest, which determined a lot of things for our local tribal nations. And so, um, yeah, I knew that this was a very kind of Seattle specific story, and I really wanted to just give that nod to the folks that Chief Seattle represented through Edie's personal history and her heritage.
Thank you very much. Our next question is by Anne. How did you become a writer? And did you consider any other careers before becoming a writer?
So, how did I become a writer? Through sheer stubbornness, kind of, because I did face a ton of rejections, dozens and dozens of rejections before I landed my first book deal. Um, and so I basically just kind of kept going and kept working on my craft and kept believing that, maybe someday it would work out. And in terms of other jobs, I'll tell you about a few other jobs I've had, which while I was a student, I worked as my very first job was as a hostess at a like kind of popular casual seafood restaurant here in Washington State. And it was like not that cool because I came home smelling like fried fish all the time and I really developed an intense dislike of shrimp while working there. And so um that was my first job. I also worked as a nanny. I also worked as a teaching assistant at the University of Washington as a graduate student. And I taught a class there that was actually on Native Americans in Hollywood and film history, which is part of the reason why the other Edith in I Can Make This Promise goes to Hollywood. And there are nods to Setching Littlefeather and some of that kind of world is because I was literally teaching that class at the time that I was writing this book, and it was just a lot of really interesting things I was thinking about and learning about at the time. Um, and I also had a research assistant position at the UW, and other like dream jobs that I had when I was young. I For a while I really wanted to be a ballet dancer. For a while I was really into archaeology. I wanted to be an archaeologist. um, I've always just had a lot of really eclectic interests. So those are just a few examples.
Very fun. Now you have more character ideas for your future books, what they do. So the next question is from Rex. This is kind of similar to what you just shared, but Rex wants to know, why were you intrigued by the topic of this book?
So I am also the daughter of a pre-Indian Child Welfare Act adoptee. And so a lot of the things that happen in Edie's family's history, while they're not exactly the same as what happened in my family, I think that I just really wanted to write an intergenerational story that shows a family trying to kind of come together to overcome that generational trauma. And I wanted to show this story of this just kind of brave, curious young girl with a lot of heart and a lot of questions, and um, just show what her perspective might be like going through something like that, learning this bit of history about her family. And yeah, I just So I guess you could say that a lot of it really came from a deeply personal place to start.
Okay. Thank you. So this looks like it's going to be our last question. I'll ask this and let Simone take it from there. This one's from Annabelle. Can you talk about how you chose the names of the characters in this book? It seems that each name has a meaning that is relevant to the storyline, not just Edie and her connection to her grandmother.
What a great question. And thank you all so much for all of your questions, by the way. And I'm so sorry we weren't able to get to all of them because I know they're just like, there's so many amazing things, and 30 minutes simply isn't enough time. But um, I will say that for Edie and with the name Edith, I mean, I definitely I kind of liked the the meaning of the name, and I liked the fact that it was kind of an old-fashioned name that I felt could have belonged to someone from, a couple generations ago. And mostly though it was just intuition, it just kind of felt right for the main character, and that's kind of how it is for all of my main characters. Sometimes it takes me a little while, but I go with the name that feels the most right. And as for a lot of the other characters, I certainly pay attention to the meanings of names, but another thing I really spend some time with when I'm doing kind of name research for my books is I really like to look at what names were kind of popular or more common around the time that the characters would have been born. And so with Edie's parents, they are Donnie and Lisa, and those are very like Gen X names kind of. And with Amelia and Serenity, those were names that are a little bit more common in kind of the um, mid mid 2000s, around the time that I thought these girls would have been born. And so um and another thing, one last thing I will say is I try to be really intentional in making the names all very distinct from each other. So it's easy for readers to tell the characters apart. So I also tried to come up with a web of character names that all kind of started with different letters and have different, rhythm with the syllables and kind of different lengths so that it's really clear who is who, if that makes sense. Those are all things that I think about when I'm naming characters and kind of drawing out the world that the book takes place in.
Thank you so much for that, Christine. And I too wish we could spend more time with you. Thank you guys for the great conversation, for submitting your amazing questions, and to our guests for just spending a special time with us on a Monday evening. We hope everyone has an amazing week, and we wish our Bob participants all the best in a few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you all again so much. This was such a joy. I'm so grateful about, and I hope you all are reading a lot of great stuff. Thank you.
And there was one question that we didn't get to ask, which I wish we would have. We got through most of our questions. There was just like 4 we didn't get through in our original list. Was what is the message about Native Americans that you want readers to take away from your books?
Yeah, that is such a great question. And
Such a good one.
also, I will say that there is also a question about the dog, and did I consider having Edie adopt the dog? That is like, I love that because that is such a, I get that question all the time from 5th graders. Like,
Interesting.
something I've learned since publishing I Can Make This Promise is that you can't have an animal in a middle grade story and just leave it like open-ended or open to interpretation, or like not clear whether or not the animal is like happy and in a good place, because the kids simply can't stand that. So, yeah, but to answer the, what do I hope folks learn about Native Americans from this book and from my other stories in general. I am really intentional about trying to write books that are contemporary and that show in subtle and also not so subtle ways the immense diversity of Indian country. And, you know, when I was growing up, a lot of the books that I had access to that dealt with Native themes or had Native characters, even very, very famous books, that kind of explored some of these topics, often did so in really reductive and stereotypical ways, and sometimes just straight up factually wrong ways. And so it's something I really try to do is to just counterbalance that.
You froze.
People trying to make it through the modern world, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Oh,
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
thank you so much.
So
Mary.
gracious of you to answer the additional question.
Yeah. I feel like that was there were so many more, and and we'll certainly make a little bit of extra time just for a little bit.
Oh, thank you so very much.